Good morning, everybody. On behalf of Governor Cuomo, welcome you all to the RIT Magic Center. It's a great building to be in. I have a few acknowledgments I want to make first. In the audience, I know we have County Executive Maggie Brooks. I want to welcome the County Executive. The Chair of the Wayne County Board of Supervisors, Jim Hoffman, is here. We have City Council Member Elaine Spaltman from Rochester City Council. We have the Brighton Town Supervisor, Bill Maley. We have Del Smith from the City of Rochester representing Mayor Warren. And from Incotama, we have Sean Whitaker, Greg Galvin, and Ela Burbank. I want to welcome them all. And really, on behalf of the Governor, I want to just thank you all for coming this morning. We are here to talk about a very important program called Startup. Before we do, just some personal observations, looking at what this governor has done over the last 4 years, from somebody who is a lifelong upstater and a resident of this area. He has done a phenomenal job. He has focused on the upstate economy. First, he created the regional councils around the state, 10 of those around New York State. The superb Finger Lakes Regional Council, chaired by both Danny Wegman and Joel Seligman, over the last 4 years have earned over $300 million in state investment for this region, which is a great accomplishment. The I-390 Kendrick Road project, I remember as mayor trying to lobby for that. Well, this governor came through with $140 million for that project, which really benefits the entire region, but specifically both RIT and U of R benefit greatly from that. Eastman Business Park, which is the largest industrial park in the country and really the largest park we have anywhere in this state and region. Over $90 million so far that's been invested in Eastman Business Park, and more coming. And those are the kind of investments. It's not just talk. It's real money, real investments. And I often say, for those that question the governor's investments in upstate New York, they could hop in a car with me, because we've been to most of them, almost all of them. And if they're not happening, then somebody's spending an awful lot of money renting construction workers and cranes, because they're all over the place. And that's what you see from all over the state. He's done a phenomenal job, and he really has not just talked the talk, he has really walked it incredibly. Today is going to be exciting. This is the first announcement for Startup New York, which in my mind is a game changer. I've been involved with meetings with CEOs in other areas. When they hear about this, they're just blown away by what it means, because as the governor said so many times, you can't beat zero. And that's what this is really, the incentives it offers to businesses to come and grow in our regions, and specifically the announcement today is just phenomenal. It is a game changer. It is about getting people to come, getting people to grow businesses, and we're on a campus right now which has just been a catalyst for businesses. So with that, to move this program along, I am proud to introduce my president. I'm an alum of RIT, a man who has done tremendous work here. He is our host here today. Before he comes up, one thing I want to say about Bill Dessler, because part of the announcement is about RIT today. Here's a man who followed a legendary president at this university and has made a path of his own. He has done a phenomenal job since coming here. But one of the things that I'm most impressed with, he created a program called Imagine RIT. And for those at RIT know about that, having gone there, I have been to that program. It is scary how smart these kids are on this campus. It is scary. They are such incredibly... It is. Joe Roebuck and I could not get into RIT any longer, if that were the case. But what he has done was he has created, I think, an environment that really creates opportunities for these incredibly talented students to apply their talents. And you look at the technologies of tomorrow. Bill Dessler has done that. So please welcome the great president of RIT, President Bill Dessler.
Gee, I'd never get that kind of introduction from the faculty. Thanks very much, Bob. I appreciate it. And welcome back to RIT, Bob. And also welcome to the governor. We're so thrilled to have you back on campus and back in Rochester for yet another wonderful event. And thanks so much for your support of so much of what's going on in this region and actually at RIT specifically. So thanks so much for that. I'd like to go off script just a quick moment to say that I really think this Startup New York program is really a special program, and it's extremely cleverly designed. I'm not sure how many people realize how clever this design is. I think not only is it, of course, provide significant tax incentives for companies to get started in New York or to move to New York from other states, but it does so that takes no property off the tax rolls. That's a very important, actually, element most people don't talk about, because it's driven by an incentive to make these new companies partner with our universities, both public and private. That's another wonderful thing, because one of our unfair advantages in New York State are our wonderful public and private universities. And so this program, actually, is in some ways a triple hitter. I mean, this is really an amazing program that I think has the potential to reverse the image of New York State as a business-unfriendly state. That's not true, but the image is out there, and the governor's been working on this very, very hard. And I think also it will help our universities, and I think it will also bolster our communities. So I think it's a tremendous program. I thank you very much. We are, of course, very proud that one of our young alumnus, Austin McCord, he graduated in 2009, folks. This is a young kid. He thought up this company idea while he was a student at RIT, and then went home to Connecticut and started the company in his father's garage. We've heard that story before, too, haven't we? He's built his company initially almost entirely on the basis of RIT grads, his old friends from college, who basically he got to come back and help build the company with him. And now, I'd say probably a majority of his key employees are RIT employees. The company now has hundreds of employees. It is the fastest growing company in Connecticut. And last year, at about this time, I had the opportunity to meet with Austin in his office in Connecticut, and I learned that he was contemplating opening a branch office of Dado in Rochester. And I said, boy, do I have a deal for you. Because he wanted to have greater access to RIT students and to the research and development activities that go on here at the campus. And so when the Governor's Startup New York program was announced, I said, this is a perfect match. An alumni-based company wants to establish a location in Rochester. We have a perfect program that will enable them to do this in the most attractive way possible. So here we are today. Because of the Governor's Startup New York program, I am so pleased to welcome Dado back to where the first thoughts about this company even started. And we're so thrilled that we have the chair of the board of Dado here with us, Paul Sagan. Paul, I'd like to invite you up to say a few words.
Thank you. Good morning, Lieutenant Governor, Governor, President Dessler. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you this morning. I am honored to represent Dado here today and talk about our opening our newest office in Rochester. I want you to know I've actually spent a lot of time in New York State. I'm here every weekend. I lived in New York City for a long time, and I've had a house in Northern Columbia County for 25 years. So I know a lot about upstate New York, even though I moved to Boston a while ago. So I understand the beauty, the promise, but also some of the struggle in the communities in upstate New York. But most importantly, the promise of what can be done here and what Dado wants to do. When the founder, Austin McCord, who you heard mentioned already, started Dado in 2007, he simply wanted to create a better backup and disaster recovery product at a lower cost than what was in the market. What he understood was, in this change brought on by the internet that's affecting every industry and creating so much disruption and new opportunity, was that you could now create products for smaller businesses and make them affordable and give them the competitive advantage that only big companies had in IT previously. And so he invented a new way of doing what's called hybrid cloud-based backup and disaster recovery. And simply what it means is that any company now can have continuous and guaranteed access to their data, regardless of what happens to it or the machines that it sits on, whether something really bad like a storm hits them or somebody spills coffee into the server. And believe me, both things seem to happen much more often than our customers think. We just at least would like them to be customers when it happens, because we get them back online across the internet in under 10 seconds. It's a lot harder when they say, I didn't use you, but I spilled coffee into the server. So we try to work forward from there. Today, Dado is the fastest growing company in Connecticut. It was started not that long ago, and we're expanding here now in New York, in Rochester, simply because Governor Cuomo made us an offer that we couldn't refuse, Startup New York. And so coming back here is really a homecoming for Austin. He studied bioinformatics when he was here. He graduated. He has great memories of the university and the city. Some of those memories he probably shouldn't talk about anymore, but most of them are okay. He told me a few of them, and I said, okay, TMI, I understand. We already have 30 RIT graduates and current students who are already employees, and we only want one thing. We want more of them. So last year when President Dessler told us about this opportunity to partner with the university and the state and the incentives, it was simply something that was the right thing to do. And in less than 9 months, here we are today to announce it and to start hiring more people. I have an observation as someone who is an outsider to this community. I spend a lot of time in two of the biggest tech hubs in Boston and Silicon Valley. And they have one thing that you have, which is great universities and great students. That is the ingredient you cannot simply imagine. You have to do it. Then they do something else. They do start up, and then they restart and reinvent again and again. And I was struck coming in here, the iconic names that buildings and streets are named for, which are great companies that don't have employees anymore. And one of the things that happens in these successful hubs, and it's my hope that this becomes another one of those hubs in America, is that they reinvent without being overly nostalgic and sentimental. So the company that I ran in Boston and Silicon Valley, Akamai, for 15 years, its headquarters used to be Novell. And we all know Google. It sits inside Silicon Graphics, old building. And Facebook sits in Sun Microsystems campus. So they restart, they reinvent, it's rinse and repeat. And I think that's what's starting to happen here, and Dado wants to be the leader in that. So we are excited to bring Dado to Rochester and RIT. We thank you for your enthusiasm and enthusiastic welcome. And I'd like to introduce the person who made that possible, the governor of the great state, Andrew Cuomo. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. First to Paul Sagan, Chairman of the Board. Thank you very much for your kind words. Made him an offer that he couldn't refuse. That was not an anti-Italian comment. Just shows there was a lot of economic policy in the movie The Godfather. It's amazing the scope of that movie. Who would have thought? Let's give them a round of applause and Dado and welcome them to New York. President Dessler and RIT, it is a pleasure to be back. And as Lieutenant Governor said, you would just feel the intelligence at RIT. And it is intimidating for guys like me and Bob Duffy and certainly for Robeck. So it is awesome. He started it, Joe. He started it. But it's a pleasure to be with Senator Joe. Yeah, I know. I just remembered that, so I'm going to be nice now. Joe Robeck, who's a great senator and a good friend. Let's give him a round of applause. And the gentleman who I'm going to have the pleasure to introduce, Joe Morelli, who you know very well, and Bob Duffy. Let me say this about Bob Duffy, because I'm a little nostalgic. Bob and I started this crusade together 4 years ago. You know him very well. I was Attorney General at the time, and I would work with him as the mayor. And he was just extraordinary. Every interaction I had with him, it was just clear that he was one of the real superstars in public service. And I had to convince Bob to run for lieutenant governor because he was mayor and he was happy being mayor. And he was reluctant when I first talked about it. And I said, look, his point was, I care so much about Rochester, and that's my home, and that's what I'm dedicated to, and I want to do everything I can for Rochester. And my point was simple. You can't help Rochester as much from Rochester as you can from Albany. Why? Because Rochester's problems are not Rochester's problems. Rochester's problems, Monroe's problems, are statewide problems. and you want to solve those problems, come to Albany, be part of the state government, because the state government is creating the problem. Problem one was the level of taxation that this state was imposing on business, combined with an anti-business mentality, an anti-business culture, an anti-business reputation, Mr. Sagan said. Whether it was the reality or the perception, it was a problem. And it was a problem. I said, and the second problem is that Albany, the state government, has constructively abandoned upstate New York for a lot of years. And that is a hard and tough thing to say. But I also believe you're never going to solve a problem that you refuse to recognize. And the truth is, upstate New York was not getting the care and attention and assistance from Albany that it should have. Why? Because upstate New York went through a tough time. 50s, 60s, the economy shifted, manufacturing shifted, population started to reduce, downstate New York started to grow. And the political system was more responsive to downstate New York than to upstate New York. That is the truth. Not right, not fair, but that was the truth. So I said, Bob, you come, you bring everything you know about Rochester and upstate New York. We'll bring that to the team, and we'll change Albany, and we'll fix those two problems. Because if you fix those two problems, then you unleash all the assets of upstate New York. And that's what got Bob Duffy to become Lieutenant Governor Bob Duffy. And I'm proud to say 3.5 years later, that is what we did. We took the tax burden in Albany. We reduced spending, first of all, down to 2%. And we reduced the state taxes to the lowest levels in history. Lowest income tax in the state of New York for the middle class since 1953. Lowest tax for the middle class up to $300,000 since 1953. Lowest corporate tax since, yep. Lowest corporate tax since 1968. Lowest manufacturing tax since 1917. Lowest rate. That's because we have the lowest rate of spending in the state of New York over the 3.5 years in recorded history, believe it or not. The Department of Budget can't find when the state spent as little additional money as it's been spending. So you spend less, you can tax less. That's exactly what we did. And that brought down the burden. And then in terms of attention for upstate New York, you have not had an administration that has worked harder for upstate New York in modern political history. What we call the Regional Economic Development Councils, where we went all around the state. We had each region organize that region because you want to help the economy in New York. There is no one economy in New York. There are different economies. North Country is one economy, Western New York, Finger Lakes, Long Island is an economy unto itself. So you really have to do it region by region. And that's what we organized. And Bob Duffy, that was his job. He took the Regional Economic Development Councils, got them organized, got them running, got more funding to catalyze those economies than ever before, and it's working. It is working, and it's working in the numbers. 440,000 new jobs we've created. This state is number 2 in job creation in the nation since the recession. And from last year, we've had the largest one-year drop in unemployment in recorded history in upstate New York, believe it or not. So the approach was right. We're doing what we said we were going to do. The proof is in the numbers. And I just want to say that none of this would have been possible had Bob Duffy not decided to leave Rochester and come to Albany. So, job well done, my friend, and thank you. Startup New York is everything I just said above on steroids. What is Startup New York? Startup New York says, okay, we got the tax rate down. We changed our mentality. We have a different attitude towards business. We're not anti-business. We're very pro-business. We have these regional economic development councils reaching out, partnering, et cetera. What is the most aggressive thing you could possibly do to attract businesses to New York? What is the ultimate economic development? Ultimate economic development, because businesses are now mobile. The same reason we've been losing businesses and people is because they're mobile and they're shopping and they're going to other districts that are cheaper. How do we use that same dynamic and reverse it? We offer the least expensive locations in the country for business. Least expensive locations in the country. That's Startup New York. Geographic zone, 0 taxes for 10 years. No income tax for the employees, no property tax, no tax. So literally these zones are the least expensive locations for business. Why does Dado come to a startup zone? Because they like us and we're charming and we're personable and we're funny people. And because it's the cheapest place they can go. Why? Even state